Alina sat in silence beside her husband Daniel as he steered their car through the dimly lit streets on the way home from yet another dull dinner with his co-workers. Through the window, she watched the lights of their small Illinois town fade into the night, and she wondered when her world had begun to feel so narrow. The car was filled with a kind of silence that had become routine between them, heavy, unspoken, and familiar. Daniel didn't ask how she felt. He hadn't in a long time. At 41, Alina knew she should have felt content. She had a stable job, a comfortable home, and 15 years of marriage behind her, yet all she felt was invisible. It hadn't been one single event that wore her down. It was a quiet, steady erosion of being unseen, of being quietly forgotten. At work, she was a dependable one, the woman who kept everything running, who picked up the slack, who made sure nothing fell apart. Yet still, others spoke over her, took credit for her ideas, and barely noticed her contributions. At home, she'd faded into the background, her voice blending into the static of Daniel's routines. She had once been full of life. Someone who traveled alone without fear, who painted until sunrise, who made friends easily and dreamed endlessly. Now, she folded laundry in silence and organized spreadsheets until her eyes blurred. She told herself it was fine, but deep down, she knew it wasn't. 2 weeks earlier, she had applied for a senior position at the logistics firm where she'd worked for years. It was a role she'd been building toward, a recognition of her dedication and skill. She worked late, polished her presentation, and poured her heart into her proposal. Her team had told her she was the perfect fit. Even her manager had offered an approving nod before her final interview. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope. Then came the meeting. The promotion went to Brian, 10 years her junior. Loud in meetings and effortlessly charming to the higher-ups, Brian was the kind of man who thrived on appearances. Alina had mentored him more times than she could count, sharing ideas, fixing his mistakes, staying late to help his team. And now, he was the one celebrating. She stood outside the conference room afterward, forcing a polite smile while her co-workers offered awkward pats on the back. "You'll get it next time," someone said gently. But she already knew there wouldn't be a next time. Something inside her quietly broke. That evening, she came home to find Daniel in his usual spot. Beer in hand, eyes fixed on the television. She slipped off her heels, feeling the ache in her feet and the heavier ache in her chest. "They gave the promotion to Brian," she said flatly. Daniel didn't turn from the screen. "Oh, that sucks. That's all you're going to say?" she asked. He glanced at her briefly. Maybe they thought he had more energy. "You said you've been tired lately." Alina froze, staring at him. "So, you think I'm not good enough either?" "I didn't say that." He shrugged, eyes back on the TV. "Don't take it so personally. It's just work." The air seemed to leave the room. She looked at the man she'd built her life with, the one who used to drive hours to watch her perform spoken word poetry back in college, and realized he didn't really see her anymore. Maybe he hadn't for years. That night, Alina couldn't sleep. She lay awake staring at the ceiling while Daniel snored softly beside her. The ache in her chest wasn't just sadness. It was a hollow pain of loss. Not the loss of a promotion or even of her marriage, but of herself. Quietly, she slipped out of bed and walked to the kitchen. The faint glow of the refrigerator cast long shadows across the floor. She poured a glass of water, but didn't drink it. Instead, she opened her laptop and clicked on an old folder labeled Me. Inside were photos from 10, maybe 15 years ago. Pictures of her smiling during a solo trip to Spain, painting barefoot in a sunlit studio, laughing with friends she hadn't spoken to in years. She didn't look flawless in those photos, but she looked alive. One by one, she clicked through them slowly, remembering the woman she used to be. Bold, curious, hungry for life. Where had that version of her gone? Buried under responsibility, under other people's expectations, under the weight of a routine that no longer felt like hers. She opened a blank document and stared at the empty page. Then, without thinking, she typed the first line. "This is the beginning of the woman you didn't believe I could be." She read it again. Something flickered inside her, a faint, familiar spark, like embers waking from a long, cold fire. She didn't know what her next step would be. only that she couldn't keep living this way. She wouldn't fade quietly. Not for her job, not for her husband, not for anyone.